When I first started my channel, I never really expected it to take the direction that it's since gone. When I first started, it was really kind of more focused about just your everyday YouTuber stuff. Of course, this was all after The Force Awakens first came out, and even though there was still a lot of shit talking on the internet, mostly it seemed a lot of what they had to say was just a lot of hot air and bluster. And I didn't feel the need to talk about these kind of people as much. But as time went on, as the fandom's descent into this further and further division and conflict with each other about every single thing that came out, and YouTube just became saturated with YouTubers that were talking non-stop about the destruction of fandoms, the destruction of Star Wars, etc., etc. I felt the need to speak my own personal opinion and point of view, because a lot of what these people had to say seemed to have very glaring flaws that they didn't either seem to consider or just were outright ignoring for the sake of their Disney's ruining everything narrative. And I know it might sound weird to those of the outside perspective, people who aren't really invested in the fandoms as much, that I'm putting so much emphasis on how serious something like this is for ultimately something that's fiction. Except, as history has shown time and time again, when people's anger is allowed to fester for long periods of time, it very rarely peters out and goes away. Especially when you have people who are constantly stoking the fire with misinformation or overhyped issues that set these people on edge and set the fandom at each other's throats. And as an end result, that stoking of hatred eventually boils up to the irrational hatred that we see more and more common every single day. Regardless of what people's intent or intentions are, I don't think anyone should be able to disagree that this kind of behavior just cannot continue to exist if we want to have any kind of fandom worth being a part of. So I was left with a few decisions. I either ignore this problem, like many did before with the prequel trilogy, where no one really stood up or voiced their opinions when the internet was saturated with this anti-Lucas narrative that tore that trilogy asunder, and allow those same exact kind of people to continue thinking that they're the only voices in the world that matter, that they're the only voices in the world whose opinion matters above all else and all others. And this isn't to say that mine is superior to anyone else's. It's just an opinion. This has always been a subjective topic, but when you have people who have diluted and muddied the conversation to the point that people have lost sight of the fact that everything that we've talked about in Star Wars, even these channels that I would call grifters or pander channels, are all talking about something that is a subjective topic. But when you treat these subjective ideas and opinions as if it's objective fact, you've lost the plot entirely. I wanted to be someone that would speak his voice to try and calm the anger, try and bring rational dialogue to the conversation, and hopefully work towards uniting the fandom with a better understanding of what we've gotten since Disney's taken over Star Wars. And I'm happy to say that as time has gone on, more and more channels have been showing up, have been coming out of the darkness to talk about their love for the fandoms and speak about the things that they don't like in a respectful manner and foster a non-toxic community for the fan base to start to enjoy. But then you have those that I feel have rode sort of the fence on that matter, where on one hand, they've contributed amazing content to the internet that I would say is all around a net positive for the fandom, but at the same time, they align themselves with people and behave in a manner that only works to muddy their reputation. I am, of course, referring to Star Wars Theory. Now, for those of you who don't know, somehow, Star Wars Theory is one of, if not the biggest Star Wars content creator on the YouTube platform. He's very well known for talking about all these different Star Wars topics, from events that happen sort of behind the scenes in these Star Wars shows and movies that come out, and he's done a lot of amazing work with fan films, things like that. But at the same time, he's followed down a disturbing path that I've seen other YouTubers, including those of the initiative, have called him out on. And for a channel that has multiple million subscribers, he seems to be taking notice and talking about other channels that ultimately, in comparison, are relatively insignificant in terms of subscriber count comparatively to his, which leads me to believe that perhaps this could be a guilty conscience of some kind, where perhaps he understands the things he's doing are not for the best interests of the fandom, and having people openly talk about it and call him out on it more and more has started to wear down his last nerve. And it's specifically due to that gives me hope that maybe somehow, some way, my channel might somehow make it onto his screen, and perhaps my words might reach him. And today I wanted to talk to you about my own personal perspective on the man. So from here on out, I will be speaking as though I'm speaking directly to Star Wars Theory. Hi, how's it going? So before I get started with the uncomfortable subject at hand, I didn't want to discount any of the good work that I think you've done in the past. For example, your Darth Vader fan film was that was some good stuff. I loved that. And in fact, it's specifically because of that kind of content that you've created before in the past that leads me to believe that you're not just your average grifting YouTuber who's in it for just the clicks. You're actually someone who wants to create quality content. And because it's at the very least a step above the Fandom Menace, for example, whose only content revolves around talking about their piss poor ideas. You, on the other hand, actually create other videos covering other topics and even talking about the things that you love. You've also said that you've wanted to help unify the fandom. You want to be a force that helps bring people together, not rip people apart. And that's really where my issue with you begins, because while that is a noble goal, and if you were to actually pursue that, I would commend you entirely for it. But your actions don't reflect your words at all. When you say you want to be a unifying force for the fandom, when you say you need to respect other people's opinions, even if you disagree, but when you're finding someone that is sharing an opinion that you disagree with, you go out of your way to cut them down.
If you like or dislike the sequels or anything Disney has done, please be respectful to everyone else.
A few minutes later.
I know that what is being created right now isn't Star Wars. You guys aren't doing a proper job. You guys are effing up and you need to get your shit together. And I believe that going forwards, they will tread very carefully on the projects that they will make, because they know that they will have to answer for their lack of vision.
You have paid the price for your lack of vision.
And their destruction of this sacred story.
Sacred Jedi tax.
Just for a measly few dollars.
You say you want to be a unifying force for the fandom, and then you create a animation with that goal in mind, except you portray sequel fans as ignorant gatekeepers who only know Star Wars from the sequel trilogy and are completely clueless as to the other content that exists. I'm left to believe that you're either an incredibly ignorant person who's utterly tone deaf in how you make your content with the intention of wanting to be a unifying force, or you're actually a very disingenuous person who is so incredibly bad faith, you veiled this idea of unity over your just blatant mockery of sequel fans. And here's the thing, I could literally forgive all of that. Even the more nitpicky stuff that I haven't even mentioned so far, such as you claiming you don't feel like you're any kind of celebrity type figure, but when you're not personally invited to a Star Wars celebration, you go out of your way to make a post to act as though you're getting snubbed.
I know that what is being created right now isn't Star Wars. You guys aren't doing a proper job. You guys are effing up and you need to get your shit together, because they know that they will have to answer for their lack of vision.
You have paid the price for your lack of vision.
And their destruction of this sacred story just for a measly few dollars.
Gee, I wonder why they didn't invite you. And I could literally forgive all of that. But when you say you want to be a unifying force for the Star Wars fandom, and you simultaneously work alongside and give praise to the people who, in no exaggeration, are singularly responsible for the division, not Disney, not Kathleen Kennedy, not Dave Filoni, not Jon Favreau, not the sequel trilogy, not anything in relation to the content that's been created. I am, of course, referring to the Fandom Menace and people who've worked with the Fandom Menace in the past, such as yourself, who's given praise to people like Doomcock. All of these people who have time and time again been exposed and proven to be charlatans, who've worked alongside people who, by your logic, someone who has claimed to have great respect for George Lucas, you are simultaneously working alongside with people who work with people that would utterly spit in that man's face and all of his ideas and all the values he holds.
Oh no, not this again.
Oh, yes.
I was hoping for a pokey meme.
Cool. He, him, lesbian? No, there's no.
Cool. Now the LGBTQ confuses itself.
What is on the hands there? Are those bandages?
I was confused about that too, but I figured it would be toxic to ask in this day and age.
This person's very like, don't notice the bandages on my
I think
wrist.
they're too fucking retarded to actually cut their wrists.
I have no reason to believe any word that comes out of your mouth is genuine. Now, maybe if you had used your power and your influence to work with these guys and maybe talk to them, be like, hey, listen, I know you guys are upset and I want to believe you guys are genuine about the things that you say, but the way you're talking about certain things, like here's the things that doesn't really make sense because I know Star Wars pretty well and a lot of the shit that you say is pretty batshit absurd and some of you guys are just outright lying. You know who you are. If you actually want the fandom to unify and be on board with you collectively, maybe you should change your narratives a bit and not work with people that utterly would wipe their ass with the original trilogy if it came out today, made by George Lucas, as is. But you don't. You instead work with them time and time again and you give praise to them. And really, if the only reason you've decided to work alongside these people is because you clearly have this disdain for Disney, which I'm not necessarily faulting you for, okay? But if the only reason you're aligning with them is only based around this mutual disdain for, well, let's just say leftist ideology along with Disney, while simultaneously not recognizing the overhyped, overinflated, over-dramatized, and more often than not, just blanketly fictional bullshit that these people continuously peddle day in and day out, I have no reason to believe you're doing what you're doing for the right reasons. I have no reason to believe that you're in it to be a unifying force for the fandom. If you're actually wanting to be that kind of force, if you're actually wanting to be something that's helpful to the Star Wars community, I would greatly suggest that you take a second look at these people that you've given praise to, that you've worked alongside with happily, it seems, for a long time, and maybe recognize them for who they actually are. Charlatans. You are one of the biggest Star Wars content creators on the platform. You've done good work in the past. But if you can't see the people that you're working with and helping the pushing of the narrative that they've invented, rather than actually addressing any genuine problems, I have no reason to believe that you are someone that wants to help, that wants to unify the fandom, other than unifying them under ignorance and bigotry and hatred. Things that Star Wars has always fought against, always warned against. I just want you to consider the power that you have and actually recognize the influence that you have with this fandom and really ask yourself, is what you're doing helping? Is what you're doing unifying in any way? Or is it just unifying the people who are already upset and further perpetuating their anger that is just going to continue keeping us divided? And if your only real response to any of this is, well, they would be all unified if they would just do everything that we wanted them to do, they just never question me or this other select group of fans ever again, don't say that you're in it to be a unifying force. You're in it to just see your side win. And I've tried my entire life to not see Star Wars that way. Star Wars is for everybody. It's made for everybody. Be the positive influence that you claim you want to see. Because if you were, I highly doubt a lot of YouTubers would have anything negative to say about you. And maybe try it out for a while and distance yourself from these people that you've unfortunately aligned yourself with and see how long it takes for them to turn on you. They did so with Dave Filoni on a dime when it finally dawned on them that he wasn't kowtowing to their fictional narrative that they made up about him. But that's just from one YouTuber to another. I hope you consider what I had to say. And for anyone else who's watched, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If somehow, some way you have any means of getting this video to him or or getting him to watch this video, I wouldn't mind seeing him review it. But with all that being said, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you in the next one. See ya. And may the force be with you. Always.